All right, so I am Leslie Petitjean. I am a senior expert in the circular economy team in ICLE Europe. Sorry. So I want to change the slide, but it doesn't work. This is my time to have a technical issue. Just a minute, sorry. Oh,
it's playing a little bit up today. Now we can see the beautiful lake.
Yeah, but the thing is, now I can change it.
Now you can.
Now it's working. All right, just a minute. All right, so maybe just 2 words on ICLE, because I'm not sure that everybody knows ICLE. So we are a network of cities, actually representing the voice of the cities. We are in an international organization, so we have different offices around the world. But ICLE Europe is based in Freiburg in Germany, and so we represent the European level. So we advocate also the voice for cities at the European level as well. So our goal is to develop innovative projects alongside with cities on sustainable development in general, but so the team I am part of is on circular economy, and City Loops is one of the major projects that we have been working on in the last 4 years. Sorry, try to change, it doesn't work again. It's a bit annoying.
Did you click on the Teams meeting by any chance? I need to go back and click on the slides. No, here it came.
It's work? Okay, yeah. It's working. So just a quick reminder also on City Loops. So as Pernie said, the project has started like 4 years ago, and it will end in three days. So this is really like the home stretch. And yeah, as you say as well, 4 years ago, like circular economy and circular construction was really a niche topic. Even, I mean, it is still sometimes quite not a mainstream topic, but we know more and more, and there are more and more also instruments and tools that has been developed. But 4 years ago, the topic was really new. So the goal was really to experiment widely what could be done on 2 mainstreams, so the bio-waste and the construction and demolition waste, including soil, because this is the 2 major streams that cities have to address. About the consortium, actually, there are around 28 partners in the project from 8 countries. So not only cities, actually, were also supported by university or also ministry. And that's what makes the big value also of this project is the different range of partners working all together on this. And this is like a Horizon 2020 program. So the main objective is actually to close or at least to narrow the loop for those 2 streams of materials, so bio-waste and construction and demolition waste. And for this, we have actually implemented some new instruments, new tools, new methodologies in 7 cities. Well, actually, it was 7 cities for the whole project, but for the construction and demolition waste, it was only 6 cities that I will present just in the slide after this one. And so the goal is actually to reduce the resource consumption and just to consider how we can work more locally also with the resource around the city, and like to avoid using resources coming really far from the cities, and also developing or increasing the environmental impact, or like saving more CO2 as well for the urban development of the cities. So these are the 7 pilot cities which has been part of the City Loops project. So the good thing is that it was quite a good representation of the European context, because you can see that there are some cities from really Northern Europe and also Southern Europe. So there was Bodo in Norway, Mikkeli in Finland, Roskilde and Jøtastrup in Denmark, Apeldoorn in the Netherlands, Seville in Spain, and Porto in Portugal. Just Porto was actually not a city experimenting on construction and demolition waste, but so the 6 other were actually the partners for the construction and demolition waste. So if we dive into a bit more about what has been done by the cities along the project, So you can see here the value chain. And what is interesting is, even though most of the cities have addressed most of the steps of the value chain for the construction sector, there are also some cities which have focused more the efforts on or certain parts of the value chain. So this is kind of the case for Mikkeli, for instance, and also Bodo, because I will explain it later, but it was a really huge project. And so, as you may know as well, sometimes the timeline of a project, especially for urban planning, they are delayed. And so that's what happened, but still they have developed many tools and many interesting approaches as well. So to start, we can start by Apeldoorn, so the city in the Netherlands. What was also interesting, maybe I just forgot in the last slide, is that the cities that are working on different infrastructure, not only buildings. So you have some example, obviously on the buildings, but also on the renovation of road or also infrastructure for public works. So this is the case for Seville, for instance. So for Apeldoorn, the project focused on the renovation of a residential road, actually. So the goal was to reuse as much material as possible locally. So for this, Apeldoorn would work really closely with the Saxion University on this. They have developed a series of tools and new approaches. So for instance, they scan the materials to assess the quantity and the quality of the materials of the pavers that could be possibly reused locally. What was also really interesting and what was really important for the city is to embark also the citizen on this project. So they have developed some raising awareness campaign also to let them know about what would be done within the city and within the neighborhood. And when we talk about circular construction, usually we face the problem of storage and matching as well. And so Apeldoorn has also faced this issue. And so for this, they have developed a collaboration with the online marketplace. And they have been struggling a bit at the beginning because they wanted to develop their own platform, but so they just recognized that it was hard to also invite or to recruit new visitors. So at the end, and it's one also of the lesson learned, is that if some instrument already exists at the regional or at the national level, just work with them because they already exist. So yeah, take profit of the existing instrument. So yeah, it was mainly for Apeldoorn, but just also to let you know that for all the cities, if you want to know more, because I don't have that much time, so we cannot dig into really each city, but there are the demonstration report for each city are on the website. So really, if you are interested on a specific case, just go to the website, and so you can find the demonstration report for each city. So for Mikkeli, Finland, well, they are focused mostly on the demolition part. So actually, the demo action was about how we can demolish more selectively and effectively to hospital. And what they have learned actually is that we definitely need to have a really good pre-demolition audit to actually be aware of which resources and which materials will be demolished and which one we can reuse possibly or recycle possibly in another construction. And what was also important, and one kind of a legacy for them, is that City Loops really helped them to also involve different stakeholders, like within the local authority from the different departments, but also externally. So for the companies, for instance, it was kind of a really good opportunity to develop some also collaborative workshops with them, just to make them more aware about the need to develop new practices for circularity. For Øye Taastrup, so now we are traveling in Denmark, just gather Øye Taastrup and Roskilde. So Øye Taastrup, what is interesting actually is that they play a role of matchmaker. So they just went beyond their own asset and their own buildings, and they have worked with a social housing company in the city to actually use the concrete that has been demolished in a social housing building, to recycle the concrete in the foundation of the new city hall. So this is kind of a good matching, and so the city can also play this role of matchmaking between different stakeholders at the local scale. They also work on how to reuse locally soil. So actually this is also something that has been developed within CityLoops, is how we can reuse locally the soil. So it has been done by Ode Testrup, Roskilde and Bodo as well. And one of the big and the major lesson learned as well is what has been done with the old city hall of Jatastrup. So actually they work with a private developer, Ikano. So they have embedded some circular criteria within the tender, because the goal was to demolish firstly the old city hall. But after a while, and for like different reasons, including the one that the price material increased this last year, actually policymaker and political representative, they have decided not to demolish at the end the old city hall, but it will be refurbished for becoming new apartments in the future urban area. So this is kind of really, really good news, because one of the main lessons learned is to avoid demolishing at all if possible and when possible. From Roskilde, so all the demo action focused actually on the urban area called the Musicon, and so there were a lot of demolition and transformation of building that happened there, and it was a good opportunity to develop also circular practices, and also to work especially on how to procure differently, how to integrate some circular criteria to recruit the contractor, and also how to deal more with the risk management, and how we can actually define more the risk between the contractor, the procurer, so to say, for in this case, the local authorities, and how we can all change our practice by having a framework of just managing the most efficient way the risk for this kind of new innovative practices. So in Bodo, sorry, I don't know if I mispronounce it or not. Well, the goal actually in Bodo was to, the main action was to demolish the military airport, to relocate it in another place, in another area in the city. So as I say in the introduction, it has not been done because, yeah, the action was really too long. But now what they did, they have actually developed a really nice digital twin tool, which was really efficient also to help policymakers to take decision. Because when you work also in circular construction, it's actually pretty important and interesting to have a traceability of the flows of the material that you use. And this is basically what you can see on the top right of the slide. This is a representation of the flow and what could look like as well the future area, and having this kind of visualization and representation of what the project would look like is really important actually for decision makers. So this is a tool also where you can have more information on the website. An important thing as well is that they really put a lot of effort to involve different stakeholders, so citizens, students, and also companies. So they have developed a work of collaborative also workshop. I insist a lot on this because actually the stakeholders engagement, we have seen actually that this is crucial to have a lot of people on board with us or with local authority. If you want to work on this, you really need to identify the stakeholders with whom you can work and who are also willing to work and to change their practice with you. And also circular procurement for Bodo was really like a key, I would say a key tool actually that really helped them to mainstream the circular practices, because now So with Cityloop, they have started to work on this, on embedding circular criteria within the tenders, but now it becomes mainstream, and so they have adopted a circular procurement strategy also at the city level. And to finish for the cities, so the last one is Seville, and actually they have worked on water pipelines because they wanted to replace the water pipeline. So the goal was actually not to use new material for this, but to try the best to reuse the one that they will excavate. And also one of the big problem in Seville is actually the illegal dumping of construction and demolition waste that they have in the city. So for this, they have actually developed some clean points to decrease the number of the rate of the illegal dumping, and we have seen that actually it really helped this to kind of clean the city, and that people just bring their CDV in these clean points. So this was quite successful. Just maybe to draw a bigger picture on the different lesson learned. So this kind of a rough scheme, and even though, I mean, it's always hard to represent the scheme, actually, we don't know if we have to make it round, we don't know if we have to make it linear, but and you can address also different part of the value chain. You don't have to address everything, but we just want to stress maybe the main lesson learned for each step. So actually, spatial planning, this is also one important lesson learned, is the earlier the better. So you really should, I mean, if you want to start actually working on this, just do it well in advance and identify the stakeholders with whom you would like to work, because you will never do it too early, actually, because it takes, I mean, this is still innovative, so you will still need a lot of time to prepare your project, and also to have this coordination with the different stakeholders. So that's why we really want to insist on spatial planning, or planning is always a really important step. And if we want to illustrate this, we can talk about Bodo, actually, which has done this with their digital twin tool, because also the data management and gathering all the data on the circular, on the material flow could be really helpful to convince the policymakers as well, if you want to launch a circular project. For the demolition, well, actually, one of the men, I already told it, but so if you can avoid demolishing, so please avoid it and refurbish as much as possible. This is one of the main lessons learned from EUE Testrup. But also for the demolition, if we really want to have this circular flow that start to be established, we really need to push actually the supply in reused and recycling materials. So if we want to do this, we actually have to really conduct some pre-demolition audit for each demolition or EV renovation, whatever. But so this is kind of a picture of Michele, because they have really worked on this, and they have developed also some guidelines about how to conduct a pre-demolition audit, and how to conduct also a really good screening demolition. So this is kind of really important, because if you don't do this step, so you won't have like the knowledge of which material you can reuse, or within your own construction project, but also for other ones. But this is kind of a starting point, I would say, if you want to start this journey. This is the picture of EUE Testrup old CTO that we actually be refurbished in new apartment with the Ikanos project. The third one, so this is like the creation of a secondary materials market. This is also crucial, because like if you do the pre-demolition audit, and if you also use reuse material or recycling material in your new construction, you will see that there is kind of a missing piece in between. And so the missing piece is actually how we can develop some tools, and how we can use the tools that helps to connect the demolition and the construction. And so this embed actually creation of secondary material market, embed the online platform Also the physical material bank or material depots. I know that sometimes the words can just slightly change depending on the project, but like the goal is always the same behind this. Is like, where do we store the material that we will demolish? And where do we store them in order to reuse them somewhere else? So this is kind of a big issue. The cities have developed some material depots also really locally. They have also developed or used online platform to help the matching. This is kind of an example that you can find also on the Cityloops website, is the experience from Apeldoorn that used the DuSpot platform. But as I said, depending on your country, your city, and your local context, you can see, or you can look for already existing instruments. And the last is new construction. So we put new in bracket because, again, if you can refurbish, refurbish. But in new construction, the goal is actually to push the demand actually for reused material, because if we do some pre-demolition audit, so for sure we will have some reused material that we can reuse. But if there is no demand on this, well, actually, well, yeah, there won't be this match between the two. So as a procurer, we need to have impact on the demolition, but also we need to have impact on the construction. So we need to ask for reuse or recycling material within our new construction. And this is actually what has been done in Roskilde, in the new parking garage that has been built on the Musicon area. So this is basically the value chain, but here you have also some cross-cutting topics which are really important. So as I already said, data management, and how you can also have traceability, and it can also help you developing the data management to have this assessment of your project. If you have developed some indicators about the environmental impact of your project, you can track the progress of your projects thanks to collecting data. The stakeholders engagement and the public procurement also really important, because you really need to identify as early as possible the good stakeholders you would like to work with, and the contractor you would like or you would be willing to work with. And also something that we will discuss just after, this is the change in the organization, because we have seen that this is really a cross-cutting topic. So it will change your organization like within the local authority. So there are some cities who has developed, for instance, some internal working group that worked pretty well, also for the practitioner, but also for the politician. But also organization goes beyond the city, so it has to involve and embark stakeholders outside the city. So this is really like a crucial issue, and all the cities say, like, if you don't have political support and if you don't have support from the different departments, you cannot really achieve this like successfully. So you really need to embark a lot of stakeholders on board. And the business cases, so I know this is like a crucial point, and I know Erika will discuss this as well, but depending again on your national context, on the stream or the material that you want to work on, you will have different results. But the good thing is actually we have some profitable business cases that has happened in Cityloops. So this is kind of a good news, because we know that this is kind of like the major issue that we face about circularity, is that now the market is not always ready, but for some streams and for some countries as well, we already stand there. So this is kind of a good news. Just really shortly.
We need to wrap it up, Leslie.
Yeah. So really shortly, the role of local authority, just if you are a public procurer, so we can work on our own assets. But if we want to increase the impact, you can also work as a local facilitator and network developer by developing some tools to also help matchmaking, and also developing also some new regulation on your urban planning documents can really help to increase the impact. And just 2 words on the Cityloops handbook, actually. So we have gathered all the different experience on this handbook that is available on the website. And what we want to give here is the comprehensive overview and the first level of information for cities who want to start to start working on circular construction. And we really wanted to have like a practical handbook with practical recommendation. So throughout the document, you can find some good example from cities and some quotes as well to have some like really concrete feedback from the cities. We also have some relevant tools, because we know that if you start, if you have the will to start, you really need to work with some tools. And that's why, like, also depending on the different step of the value chain, you will find some different toolbox that will help you to know some tools that could be useful for your project. And again, this is just the first level of information, and feel free to visit the Cityloops website, where you will see when you will find more information. So the demo report of the cities, the instrument that has been developed. And